Well, hello, everybody out there in Facebook land, TikTok world, YouTube, everywhere. There's going to be a clip of this going live or just a clip there of being recorded too. Oh, man. Rough night, rough night. So I'm here late. Coming on late. A little bit on the tired side, but that's okay. We're still here. We're still coming on and being here. What picture should we put up? Some Patrick Bateman. What do you think about that? Patrick Bateman from American Psycho. Switch out the Batman right there. Bum, bum, bum. Y'all hear me okay? I hope you can. And again, welcome to the broadcast booth, everybody. I am Monty Anderson, your host here at 412 Productions, the art of Monty Anderson, and welcome to the show. Again, we're coming on a little bit later than normal, than what we normally would come on, but, it is what it is. It was a rough night with animals up and down a lot, and then wanting their normal, you know, food at 3:30 in the morning. Even though I woke up later than that, so Bacon Bit was screaming pretty loud about not having her food, at the 3:30 time frame. It was about an hour later, which isn't going to kill her. And Bacon Bit is a pig. If you don't know, she's a right now indoor outdoor pig that we're going to be transitioning more to outside than being inside. So we just got to get the enclosure done up for the chickens first, and then we can move the pigs out to where the chickens coop is at the moment. Because our old chicken coop and run, is just way too drafty for them, and the wintertime weather is here, where it's staying in the 30s, and so we are in the process there of, you know, making a new coop that has much more adequate uh, accommodations for everybody. And then from there, we also have, you know, plenty of heat and things of that nature for the chickens. So once we get that done, then we'll be able to move the pigs into their permanent enclosure, which will keep them out of the elements and keep them dry and warm and all that good stuff. But everything takes time. Everything takes a little bit of money, and sometimes you run out of both time and money. So today's title is Old and New. Now, we've always talked about here, I couldn't quite put my fingers on my Anne Rice Interview with a Vampire, my first print, first edition, but I was able to pull out my Seduction of the Innocent by Frederick Wortham, MD, The Influence of Comic Books on Today's Youth. And you can see the age of it right there. And this is Mr. Wortham on the back, the one man that tried to destroy comic books for everybody back in the, and I'll give you the exact date here in just 1 second. Back in 1953. So, and let's go with the publisher's note here. This book, Seduction of the Innocent, is the result of 7 years of scientific investigation conducted by Dr. Frederick Wortham. He has long experience in technical research and was the first psychiatrist to be awarded a fellowship by the National Research Council. From his studies on the brain came an authoritative textbook, The Brain as an Organ, which we all know it is. Used all over the world, his clinical investigations resulted in the discovery of new mental disease now incorporated in leading psychiatric psychiatric textbooks. But yeah, it just goes on from there. Um, He even discussed this book and his views before the federal courts, including the U.S. Supreme Court in Washington. An expert opinion by a psychiatrist is an opinion based on facts, facts that can be demonstrated and proved. This book, thoroughly documented by facts and cases, gives the substance of Dr. Wortham's expert opinion on the effects that comic books have on the minds and behavior of children who come in contact with them. He was studied, or he has studied all varieties of comic books. His findings are presented, therefore, against the background of all kinds of comic books. He has directed this book specifically at crime comic books, which he defines as those comic books that depict crime, whether the setting is urban, western, science fiction, jungle, adventure, or the realm of supermen, horror, or supernatural beings. But there you go. This is the guy that tried to end comic books, Dr. Frederick Wortham, MD. And again, this was from 1953, is when this one was copyrighted right there. So that's an oldie book. Now, and I've talked about that book for quite a while, being in my collection. And, you know, he single handedly was the one that had the Comics Code Authority presented to um, the comic book world. If your comic book didn't have this code of authority on it, it wasn't getting printed back in the day. Now, much, much later, the comic book industry fought back. It was like, we don't care if ours doesn't meet your code. We're still going to produce our comic book anyway. So you had a ton of independent comic book companies starting up, a ton of independent comic book companies going against the Comics Code Authority, which meant more violence, more nudity, more, um, just over the top different things in their books. And so then, I mean, the Code Authority just kind of went away. I don't even think the new books of today, which I do not have any that I can pinpoint right here, have the Code Authority on it anymore. As a matter of fact, let's just do this. I'm looking here to see when it ended. Bum, bum, bum. Bum, bum, bum. Best stylist says 70s. Yes, I was born in the 70s. Because even books in the 80s still had the Comic Code Authority on it. So it was 2011 was when the Comics Code Authority was rendered, or Marvel Comics abandoned the Code Authority in 2001. By 2010, only three major publishers still adhered to it: DC Comics, Archie Comics, and Bongo Comics. Bongo broke with the CCA in 2010. DC and Archie followed in 2011, rendering the code defunct. So there you go. By 2011, no one was using the Code Authority anymore, and it lasted for nearly 60 years just because of this book right here. This man brought this Code Authority, and if it didn't pass mustard, if it didn't pass the mustard, the Dijon. I'm sorry, pardon me. Do you have any Grey Poupon? But of course. Some of you won't even remember that commercial. But yeah, it all started a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. A little green guy with a snake around his neck and a cane. So, and as it even says, Wortham is often ridiculed as a failed social scientist whose studies of the effects of comics lack credibility. And so, um, that which again led to it all. And so they even had a comic censors Bible, which was the comics code, the Bible of comic book censors. So you had that Spider-Man to the rescue in '71. Um, Revisions were crafted in December of 1970. The publishers agreed to the new code, and it would go into effect in February 1st, 1971. So they did let some books through before the actual seal uh, came about. So it came about in the 1970s, like the one guy said earlier, and but it was after the Seduction of the Innocent in 1953 came out. But new changes happened in '71, um, and then in '82 another draft happened, and then by 2001, Marvel was like, "Screw this, we're done with your authority," and they went away from it. And then by 2011, everybody went away from it. So, but yeah, it started early on in the 1930s is whenever people were recognizing, especially, like it said, um, the first group to object to comics was educators who saw comics as a bad influence on students' reading abilities and literary taste. They filled professional journals with suggestions on how to wean their pupils from superhero tales. Comic books also represented a threat to their authority. For the first time, children could select their own leisure reading material. And so adults didn't like that, you know. And then, of course, your church and civic groups added their members' voices to protest. They objected to immoral content such as scantily clad women in jungle comics and the glorification of villains in crime comics. The Catholic Church's National Office of Decent Literature added comics to the materials it evaluated. In post war America, a new focus on juvenile delinquency drew a third group into the debate over the effect of comics. Mental health experts, among them was Dr. Frederick Wortham, a noted New York psychiatrist who campaigned to ban the sale of comics to children. He argued that children imitated the actions of comic book characters and that the content desensitized children to violence. Just like they say horror movies and documentaries and all that stuff desensitize everybody, you know. But there you go, a little bit of history and why this book is so relevant. If you ever wanted to read it, it's out there. You can find it on PDF and all that good stuff. But Frederick Wortham's MD, Seduction of the Innocent, 1953 publication. Oh, so DC and Marvel against media, like it's even a real conversation. Comics continue to rule. Absolutely, comics will always rule. You're never going to take them away. You know, it's just that for the longest time, like I said, up until 2001 when Marvel decided to go away from the Code Authority, they had to follow rules of what they could publish and how violent a book could be, and uh, how people had to be dressed inside of comic books. But after a while, they're like, no, we want to do what we want. We want to make our books as violent as we want, just like, if we wanted to publish, Patrick Bateman back here chopping somebody up, then that's what they would do, you know. And then, like I said, Bongo and Archie and DC finally went away from the Code Authority by 2010. By 2011, the Code Authority was completely gone from the industry. So it lasted a lot longer than I thought it did, to be honest. Um, but once you get so many voices, you know, I don't even know what I said with Punish. Did I say Punish? I don't think I said Punish. I mean, I could have. But the whole thought that you had to adhere to a code, to get your books published, um, because you had to have the code on the front, and that is interesting because oh no, it is right there. It is in the caption, or not caption box, the label box in the corner. I see it now. I was going to say the X Men book that I have right there doesn't have it, but it does. It's right next to the number and the price. So, but it had to be on the front cover somewhere. And for Marvel to finally pull the trigger, you know, I'm surprised they lasted as long as they did with it. Um, was amazing, you know, because especially with the stuff that they produce, scantily clad women in outfits. I mean, Emma Frost is, you know, let's take the Hellfire Club for example. Uh, that was nothing but leather and lace in that era of stuff going on. So I'm surprised that even passed mustard for when it came out. Uh, to be honest, but no, with the violence and over the top violence and just gore and blood and all that good stuff, comic books were the thing, and they were never going to go away, and they still won't go away. You will get them in any form, fashion, or another. It's just some people will get them slabbed and graded and never touch them again. That's not a collection to me. I mean, in reality. Now, there are some that I can understand, like my Hulk 181, 182. Um, and I've got some other ones, like the first appearance of Thanos in Iron Man 55, you know, that's autographed by Starlin. Dexter, knock it off. DC creators were fantastic. The storylines are going to create better movies for decades. Well, the problem with DC movies is that they're trying to catch up with Marvel movies. I can tell you're a DC fan, and I only like a couple of characters on the DC side. Batman being one of them. Of course, Joker, all time, Batman and Joker, and there's nothing wrong with that. Now, I'm a Marvel guy because Uncanny X Men was the very first comic book that I ever read, that I ever picked up, which I do have an encapsulated, graded. Plus, I have the newsstand and direct edition of. And Marvel does a great job with their movies, especially with this whole MCU universe. Now, they do have some hit or miss movies, like everybody does. Now, DC has great comic or cartoons over the actual live action movies. Their live action movies suck. Um, and it's just a proven fact. Suicide Squad sucked. Batman versus Superman sucked. The list goes on and on. I mean, even most of the early Batman sucked, especially with George Clooney and Val Kilmer in them. But once they brought Christian Bale in there, uh, Pattison, in the new Batmans. Those are great movies. The 1989, 1992 Batmans were great. But once they started doing the bat nipples and the bat butts and just making it campy and over the top, colorful with neon lights and stuff like that, it's just like, come on, guys. I mean, yeah, there was some Batman stuff in there like that. I mean, even them covering right now in the action figure realm with the whole rainbow Batman right now, with his pink outfit and then his rainbow colored outfit and stuff like that, which he had a different color outfit, for quite a while, which is why he was called the Rainbow Batman there for a hot minute. It gets a little too campy. Now, of course, you have Adam West back here that I do love. I have him autographed on my back wall back here, which is right there on the 1966 and the album right there, boom, 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 and an actual picture of him right there on the bottom. The album, the theme music, and then the 1966 March 11th Life magazine uh, cover right there. And, you know, and tons of action figures for DC over here, especially Batman's and then the retro Batman's from the 1966 collection. DC slowing it was purposely done, but smashing Val and so on is weak. You can say what you want. You have your opinion on those movies, and I have mine. You know, I'm not saying they were horrible movies. I'm just saying they were the weakest part of them. Of a lot of the DC stuff, and DC just doesn't have great live action movies. Now they're starting to work on that, you know, and they're starting to get a little better. And I'm not saying that all of their stuff is horrible, and I never will, because I'm a comic book fan through and through. I've got 30 boxes of comic books sitting here from DC, from Marvel, from independents like Image Comics, and the list goes on and on. And I'm a comic fanatic all the way around. That's why I'm a comic book artist as well. And so, you're looking at a piece of my artwork right here. Seriously, DC started Marvel. Oh my lord. Okay. Yeah, I mean, you can go that route with the 1938s, coming out with the Superman and Batman's in the 1930s, and then Marvel coming out later. But if you want to look at it in reality, you have to look at all the pulp comics that were out in the day before the actual comic books came out. If you want to go back to it with Atlas and things of that nature with the pulp comics and the digest comics, there was other comics before Batman and Superman came out. And if you know your history on it, you'll know where that all leads. And a lot of names changed in there. And then it all just started running, concurrent with each other. But as far as a lot of the stories go and storytelling goes, Marvel had the better stuff. Again, everybody has their opinions, and so let's see here. Dun, dun, dun. Boom, boom, boom. All right. No, I mean I get your opinion. I get your point. You know. dun. All right, so National Allied Publication, which was 1935, was the precursor to the comic book world, and they published New Fun number 1, the company's first comic book and the first ever comic consisting of completely original material. And so that National Allied Publications (NAP), long before DC started their run, um, they were to become DC later. You know, it depends on what you're looking at as far as good story goes. Marvel's got a ton of great stories, and they always have. And so Archie was your first stuff. So Archie, Veronica, Jughead, all those. I mean, that's good stuff, and they're still relevant and still alive in comic book form in the digest versions today. Now they do have their comic books still, and they've got some good stuff. And I just like comic books all the way around. And dun, dun, dun. Yes, Archie was always independent of everybody else, and they had a lot of great stuff. And then they got picked up by who did they get picked up by? I can't even think who they got picked up by at this particular momento. But no, Archie was always a fun comic, just like all of your independent stuff, such as like Richie Rich and um, of course the Disney stuff back in the day with Scrooge McDuck and the Rescue Rangers and all those comic books that were coming out uh, when they did. And I've got several of those. I mean, I've got Hot Stuff comic books. The little devil with the pitchfork. Always good stuff. And I'm not gonna knock DC because DC's got some good stuff. It's just as far as their stuff goes, Marvel has outpaced them a ton. You know, and exactly the old stuff, and some of the stuff today is fun too. It's just that you got to take some of it with a grain of salt. And you know, and I'm not knocking anybody's opinion on anything, because you are obviously a DC fan, and that's great. Um, they are starting to get better stuff, especially with the absolute stuff right now. The writing is a ton better. It's got a great storyline, and a lot of people don't like it, you know. And yes, sir, Mr. Casey, welcome to the broadcast. I didn't even see you slip in there. I was talking and looking up stuff. I apologize. Um, let's see here. Bum bum bum. Get the freak out of my face. So, see, DC didn't come onto the scene until 1938, with, of course, Superman in Action Comics number 1. Now, prior to that, they were National Allied Publications, and they did create the first comic book with New Fun, the big comic magazine number 1. Yes, Passion of Comic Books, as we were talking about Seduction of the Innocent, where the Comics Code Authority came into play, and by 2011, the Comics Code Authority phased out, and he tried to, destroy the comic industry single-handedly. Frederick Wertham. This was printed in 1953, as you can tell, it is quite old, right there. I've never heard you mention the comic strips and what's your take on them. Hold on, let me pull this over. I've never heard you mention comic strips. What is your take on them as your uh, compared to the comics or the past? Yeah, I don't like to get a whole lot of new comics either. Comic strips are great because a lot that's where a lot of comic influence stuff came from was the old comic strips back in the day when that were first started in newspapers and some magazines. And so you're correct. Well, any publisher makes it hard to get new stuff, especially with the price of comic books going up um, on a regular basis, which is just ridiculous. But I understand it. Printing costs change, paying your artists and stuff changes, and all that good stuff. Um, but back to the comic strips. That was precursor to a lot of comic books out there, especially your fun stuff like Don and I were just talking about. Um, Don's a new addition to the list here, and unless you've been on here before, and I apologize if you have. Um, but comic strips were awesome because they brought into a whole new world, of fun for people, not just kids. And a lot of course, a lot of your parents didn't read the whole comic strips because they were into the political stuff. They were into the news of the day, what happened, a couple days before or the night before, to get published. All the sports and all that stuff that was happening in the newspaper when they started out, you know. And for those little comic strips in there for kids to get to read and all that good stuff, that was a for some people that was an escape, from their normal stuff because I've seen that little piece of lint on my shirt. Um, really, how can anyone get new comics? Oh my! And so for that to be their escape from their everyday norm, because some people, some kids, even back in the day, weren't treated fairly. Let's just go that route. Let's just put it in that realm. And that was their escape from the everyday norm. Was to read those comic strips of kids having fun, or uh, there was a bunch of them that had, like, I hate to say orphaned kids, but that they depicted that in the comic strips, you know, and so that's some of the stuff that kids looked up to because hey, that's not my life, but it could be within a heartbeat. I could be out there on the streets and all that good stuff, and you know, so for them to be able to get to read that comic strip and get away from the abuse or whatever that was going on in their household, you know, I've tried too many times. I think they both want us orphaned. And, comic books are an escape. Like I said, this one being the first comic book I ever read, right here, number 183. Great comic, great story, and it's a coming of age story, basically, as Peter, Logan, and Nightcrawler all go to a bar to unwind, you know? And it's until Juggernaut decides to walk in. Mr. Kane, Mario Kane. And, Chris Claremont wrote a great story here, and he was writing great stuff with John Romita doing the artwork and Dan Green covers and stuff like that. Um, but just phenomenal stuff right here. And this literally made me go to the dictionary and figure out what a lot of the words meant in here because I'd heard them, but I didn't know what they meant in conjunction with a lot of stuff going on. So, you know, for Frederick Wortham to say that it was taking away from the minds of children, well, that's wrong. Yeah, that was 1953 when that book came out, but this made me go to the dictionary. Okay, that's what that word really means in conjunction to what they're talking about. Going through here, the superhero grew up in grew up in orphan shelter is a common theme, or the pesky teenage. Yeah, absolutely. That's how it runs rampant in there. But this was my escape whenever I read this comic book, and it was a friend of mine that had it. He had a subscription to the Uncanny X Men and a few others, but this one, the Uncanny X Men, drew me in as a kid, as a not really a teenager at the time. I was close, but you know, I was in my teens. So you see, if you held on to it now, if now, are you talking about the Todd McFarlane run, or are you talking about the original Amazing Spider-Man, number three? You know, and because it's going to be worth more today, uh, than just 3,000. It's just like my Hulk 181, 182. Okay, you're Amazing Spider-Man. Which, you know, I am going to get that one graded. I'm going to get it pressed as well. But I could potentially have a $10,000 comic book sitting in my hand with that comic book, with the Hulk 181. And then I've also got a ton of uh, Supermans and a couple Batmans in there and things of that nature. Uh, but I've got a lot of first editions of, not a lot, but a lot of key issues is what I've got in my collection, and I have over, I would say, well, I've got over 30 comic book boxes. The majority of those are long boxes, so that's a lot. He's not a comic dude. Maybe he will be one day. You never know. My girls aren't comic dudes either. Um, but my nephew is. He's got a few cool comic books that he's got slabbed. He doesn't have a whole lot of loose. And I understand those people that just want the slabbed only, um, just because of the grade, and you know will hold its value just in case. Now, can they be destroyed, water damaged, or melted inside? Of course they can. Anything's possible with anything. Nothing is guaranteed in this world, except for maybe gold and platinum and all that good stuff, diamonds. But I had a 1922 arc. That's awesome. And you gave it to him, or did you sell it off? Because, like I said, Archie's been around for a while. So DC Comics started out as National Allied Publications, and then Marvel started out as Timely Comics. You know. Let me see here, Mr. Casey. I'm missing a lot because I'm looking up more than I am down here. Um, yeah, I've seen your messages. Yes, we're at 16.8 thousand likes. I'm looking. But good morning, everybody that's showing up here now. Casey. I'm looking for your stuff right here. Da da da. I'm not seeing your. The only message I've seen is the High Dawn one and the 11,000. I've never heard you mention comic strips. What is your take on them as compared to uh, the past? Um, so that's the only messages I'm seeing right there, Casey. So I'm not sure what's going on that note or that end, when it comes down to it. But I don't know if you are. I don't know what's going on. I ask how much on comic books now off rack. Okay, it just depends because some comic books, like the brand new ones right now, some of them are like $7 a shot right off the rack. Um, Whereas, of course, that one had a 60 cent cover when they started out at like a 5 cents, and then they moved up to they just kept going up from there. And then you've got the variant issues with the 35 cent trial covers on some of them. You know, Casey, it's been a minute. If you are who I think you are, Casey, somebody knows you potentially. Everybody kind of got up in arms whenever the comics went from the 60 cents to 75 cents and then a dollar something or other. You know, back in the day, but you know now most comic books try to hang around that 4.99 cover price, but a lot of them are pushing the $7 mark. And then there's a lot of independents that are selling a single issue 32-page comic book for like $16. So, and Casey says, "I'm David Casey from OKC." And so, I can't justify spending $16 for one independent comic book, especially a 32 pager. But a lot of people will, you know. And even whenever I get into my books, I'm going to try to keep it down around the my Archie was I'm going to try to keep it down around the 350 to $4 price range, if I can, because I'm going to be the one doing all the work. I'm not having to pay a bunch of artists to do interiors. I'm not having to pay a bunch of artists to do, covers. Now I am going to have certain different covers, some variant covers for each issue, but never the same artist twice. In my 4 issue miniseries, and it's either going to be 4 or 6, but I'm pretty sure it's going to stick to 4 once it's all said and done. Just because I can control that. Now, if it runs longer, then I'll just go ahead and do a 6. But I'm really trying to keep it to that 4 issue miniseries because I love the 4 issue miniseries that Marvel used to do back in the day, with like Longshot and Wolverine and Kitty Pryde and all of their main X-Men characters, basically. You know, and it told more of the person's story than being in the group setting, because you would get little bits and pieces of their story, just like you would in Suicide Squad or Justice League or anything on the DC side. At dawn, Archie was 25 cents. You're not the dude I served with in the military. I'm not the dude you were served with in the military either. So, but I appreciate your service. I did my nice 8 years, 6 years active, 2 years inactive. You know, got to go overseas to Afghanistan and all that goody good stuff. And oh, nothing to be sorry about. We all run across people with the same names, and you know, I run across people that are like, "Are you related to?" And they're like, "Nope, never heard of that person before in my life." And I'm like, "Okay, we just served together in the military." You know, so it's all good. Nothing to be sorry about. And no, but Casey is a really good dude. He's very knowledgeable. Uh, he's a smart cracker. I say cracker. He's a smart guy. Um, I didn't mean to use a cracker joke right there, because I'm more of a cracker than most people. I'm super white, you know, all that good stuff. I still want to get the shirt that has the white saltine cracker on it, just to make fun of my own heritage, uh, being super white. But let's still talk about some old and new stuff, you know, right here. Can you guess what this one is? Just by the cover? Can you guess? I'll even turn it around. There you go. I think David Casey can get this one. I'm so offended. I know you are. We're all crackers at times. Come on, Casey. Which one is this one? I have never. Now I guess I have. Come on, come on. Somebody get this one. Who's got the title for me? It was printed in 1974. It is a first edition. Come on, Casey. I know you got this one. The forward is for Ursula. Shel Silverstein's The Poems and Drawings of Shel Silverstein. Bruce Springsteen? Good guess. Good guess. Where the Sidewalk Ends. The first edition of Where the Sidewalk Ends at that. I haven't cracked this one open in so long. Not even funny. Still nice white pages. I mean, look at that. You've never heard of Where the Sidewalk Ends? One of the greatest children's books around? Oh my goodness. The Poems and Drawings of Shel Silverstein, again, 1974, first edition of this book. And come on, Casey, it was even produced by Evil Eye Music Incorporated. Evil Eye Music, that's pretty cool. But no, Where the Sidewalk Ends was a great children's book. If you ever see the cover, um, I don't know if they turned it into a movie or not. If they did, I don't remember it. But you know, on the most of the children's covers have the sidewalk and it ends and it's got nothing underneath it, and you see this kid peering over the edge of the sidewalk. You know, is where what most of the newer stuff depicts. Now, I can't tell you what the book cover of this one looks like without going and looking at it. I'm trying to see if they have that picture in here because I know it was based off of something. Uh, his style is very interesting, to say the least. I'm trying to see if they do have that in here, but they might not. It's not a style that most people would enjoy, if you will. But being an artist, I enjoy all styles, no matter what it is, because it gives a different perspective on the world and its reality. But yeah, they don't have that picture depicted in here like it does on the covers of everything. So, yeah, I guess he didn't do it like that. I'll look it up. My favorite children's book is Boxcar Children. I remember that one. Wow, I read really bad stuff back then. And the Great Brain books. Which books were you reading, Don, back in the day? Because I didn't read your normal stuff either. You know, Stephen King was my jam, and then later on, Clive Barker became my favorite author all the way around. When it came to the horror stuff and things of that nature. But I've always been into horror and the likes, and I live in a haunted house as well. You should have been here the other day because the Dexter painting that is where Patrick Bateman's painting is right now came flying off. Everybody got to see it. We usually see an orb or two during the show. Something happens, like Casey and Roy, who's not here. He's pouting because Cowboys lost last night, and there was a mist that came across me and the screen. You know, between here, it went between here and here. You know, I didn't see it and I couldn't find it, but oh, Mary Margaret or Judy Bloom, I got you. I got you. And of course, you got your Punky Brewster stuff. Uh, and but yeah, no, I the Mary Margarets and Judy Bloom stuff. Yeah, I get that. But yeah, I wasn't into the whole popular stuff. You know, because to me, the horror was popular to me, so that's what I gravitated towards. I had a ton of horror books when I was a kid, and that's where it led my classmates to think that I was going to be the next Schmuriel killer, which didn't happen that they know of. I'm just kidding. But yeah, I was the one that was most likely to end up in jail, uh, just because of the way I dressed. I dressed like a goth kid back in the day. I had the long black trench coat, all black, everything pretty much. Long hair. I mean, my hair was down to the small of my back, you know. And absolutely, because they get tips and tricks whenever they're watching that stuff, Casey. You know this. And then they know how to scrub the evidence, if you will. Leave no trace behind. I also had a reasonable selection of encyclopedias. See, that's awesome. And a lot of kids didn't. I didn't. I had what my parents had. They had the whole Encyclopedia Britannica, you know, uh, from A to Z and everything in between. You know, Kinda is interesting. Kinda, but yeah, no. And so yeah, books, man. All books back in the day. I wish I still had a bunch of my books from when I was a kid. You know, it's just like I regret getting rid of my. I love the books of knowledge, absolutely. You know, and I ruined myself, if you will, because I hated school and didn't want to be there, didn't want anything to do with it. You know, I stealed most of them. That's awesome. Well, I mean, I hope you have atoned for your sins, my young child. That's oh man, the things we did as kids. I mean, a lot of us should have been locked up. You know, uh, I know nothing. I see nothing. I got educated. No, I get that. You know, I mean, we all snuck something as kids. You know, I was the rebel kid too. I took stuff. You know, I even sat in jails a few times as a kid for them to try and correct my behavior. I used to steal bubble gum from the grocery stores and stuff like that. Even got chased uh, under a car. You know, uh, by a police officer. They sat me down in the jail cell and all that good stuff. And then I set the neighbor's bushes on fire one time, and they sat me down with some burned body pictures, and you know, basically trying to be like, this could happen. You know, you could take somebody's life and all that good stuff. And I still play with fire to this day. That's why I have a fireplace. You know, controlled stuff. Oh, absolutely. That's why I say your mind is only as big as you want it to be. You know, people today just they're constantly. This is not a cell phone by any means. This is a Roku remote, but they're doing this, and they're not learning shit. You know. Oh, I gotta swipe left. Oh, I gotta swipe right. Don't like that person. Gotta swipe left here. Oh. Look what's happening on Facebook. This person is telling me about their toenail fungus clippings that they're collecting. Oh, that's awesome. You know, and it's just like if you're not going to continuously broaden your horizons, broaden your mind, what's the point? You know, that's why you have so many problems with the youth of today. Is that they're not learning. All they're learning is, oh, video game. Oh, oh, look at that. Oh, I just took out that whole squad. Oh yeah. Oh, you know all that good stuff. And oh, I can drive fast, and oh, bring this girl into the car, yeah. All and it's just like that's all the knowledge that they're getting. And yes, they're going to go out and emulate that stuff. Yes, they're going to. And so I can see the point that this book had, because that this is today's youth, what they're talking about right here. Exactly. But so many parents are like, here, play your video games. I don't want to deal with you. Here, do this. I don't want to deal with you. And, so the parents are the outlets to the kids. My kids played video games. They had their video games. They had their handheld devices, Nintendos and the handhelds and all that stuff. But we set a limit on how long they could play. Is your homework done? If it's done, and we'll check it, then you can play your video games for an hour and a half. And, you know, if it's not done, get it done. And then if you've got time before dinner or before bed, then you can play your video games. But you're only going to spend this much time on it, and then you're outside the rest of the time. You know, you're not going to be inside, wasting and rotting your brain, on video games the rest of the time. So pick and choose which video game you want to play. And once you're done and that time limit's up, outside you go. Go play in the dirt. Go climb a tree. Go, you know, play with a dog. Go all this good stuff. You know, I built my first computer in 1992. See, that's awesome. I was building computers probably around that same time in the 90s. Well, it was probably later than that. It was probably 94 to 96 for me, if I had to guess. I started building mine. I need to build some new ones today with the better technology because the girlfriend does need a new one. She's a gamer, but she also likes to dabble in some other things as well. So, uh, nothing weird and crazy. So stop that ideology right there. And 286, baby. Good stuff right there. Um, but yeah, no, the technology of today when it comes to computers and things like that, even though it's obsolete when you already buy it, just like anything is, your phone's obsolete. The computers that you buy are obsolete. Yes, I have two computer setups right here. This one's my oldest one over here that I run all of my basic programs on, such as Adobe and things like that. All my old stuff, CS4. Nothing new, because I'm not into the AI stuff, the AI shtick. I don't even have. Oh, you son of a! I don't even have AI turned on my phone. You know. Oh yeah, early Pentiums and stuff like that. Yeah, you should have been here the other day, Don, because we were talking about the Amigas and the Commodore 64s and the Texas Instrument computers and things of that nature. I want Kmart to come back. There's still Kmart's, I think, in some states. Not 100% sure on that. I do Linux mostly. That's awesome. That's very cool. I need to do a server for hard drive space just because of the artwork that I do. I take this stuff, digitize it after it's hand colored, and then enhance the colors, for prints and things like that. This is a mashup between a Dreki and a Wolver from God of War, the video game. It's a commission and online Kmart. I got you. So Kmart is still around. Is still around. See, it's like here. I wish Hastings was still around here. It was a great store. It had everything in it. Used stuff, new stuff, everything from vinyl to 8 tracks to cassette tapes to VHS tapes to action figures to comic books. I mean, you name it, it was in the store. You know. Well, I appreciate that. This is my artwork as well as many other ones that I have. You can hit me up in DM if you want to get one. But I've got a ton of shirts available. Dun, dun, dun. All kinds of different ones in here. So if you would like one, hit me up. MOZ on Took Over Hastings. For the most part. And I get that. But it was an awesome store here. I mean, it was fantastic. We used to visit it at least two, sometimes three times a week while it was still around. But up until what was it, 2014? It was either 2014 or 2015 when it closed its doors here. Sad day. And it was just like when Toys R Us closed its doors here. I was going to the final days clearance sales on a regular basis, just to see what new stuff, or not new stuff, but what stuff they had clearance down to, like 75% off, 80% off, those type things. And I got a few things while they were still around. And now I'm seeing, there's still one in Texas, and then they're opening up some new ones. And it's just like, well, damn, why did you have to close them down in the first place? That was a great, fun store. Yeah, they were a little more expensive than most places, but when it came to just buying toys and action figures and things like that, but no different than walking into freaking vintage stock and you know, oh, here's a $12 figure that's $40. Sweet, let me get it. You know, and it's just like if you go online to Walmart and purchase anything from there, they're going off of the fair market price instead of what it's being sold at in stores. You know, because I was looking at some of their, which are now like $27 figures, and I have a micro center kind of close. That's awesome. And I was looking at some of the figures that they have online. I'm seeing them like going for like $90, 110, and I'm like, you walk in the store, and if they have it on the shelf, it's you know $27 or $35 or whatever they are now. And it's just like, why are we charging $90? And then I start looking on eBay, and then I start looking on Amazon. And it's just like, oh, they're keeping up with those prices, you know. And it's just like, that's just ridiculous. If your site should not be showing fair market price, you know. But no, I do need to build the girlfriend a new computer, or we'll build one together. So seriously, almost like old school. So the micro center is pretty much old school stuff, or kind of like old school stuff. I mean, that would be cool. What area do you live in? We're not asking, what town you live in, but what state do you live in? Because I'm in the Fort Smith, Arkansas area. You know, I do. Red on 5. I do have triple X shirts. I order them out. So you're in the Cleveland. Okay, cool. Um, just hit me up in DM and we'll talk, because I've got tons of different shirts available. I can't say too much about stuff like that, because TikTok gets angry because they're not getting their cut from stuff, since I don't have a TikTok shop, a TikTok store here. And I don't even know if this stuff would pass on their TikTok store. You know, I see a lot of stuff that passes on the TikTok stores. So, Portsmouth, Rhode Island. Awesome. Well, welcome to the show. Red Om 5. I hope I'm saying that correctly. What is that a name of, or why the name? Let's go that route. Okay. 23.8. 26.8 thousand likes right now. So I appreciate you guys. Don't forget to like, share, and follow. If you do follow me, I will follow you back. Now, those of you, not those of you here, right? Sales are killing TikTok. Peace out. All right, man. Don, have a good day. Don't forget to come back and join us more often, brother. And we'll argue more about DC and Marvel. The name is just random. Okay, that's cool. Some people pick their names for a reason. Like mine is 412 Productions. Obviously, that's my production company right here for my artwork. For sure. Thank you. No problem. It was fun bantering back and forth. You DC guy, you. But we talk about a little bit of everything here, from the paranormal side to horror movies to sci-fi movies to comic books to comic book artwork, my comic book artwork, you know, just like my stuff behind me. All this is my paintings right here. Here, I got Art the Clown right there on a saw blade. I've got Billy the Puppet on a saw blade. That's my Venom right there. And then down below me, right here, is my Etrigan the Demon, right there, on that I painted on that action figure of the demon. So there you go. But I do have tons of different shirts available. We have many different sizes. Once you get me a size, I order it, and then I get it in and ship it directly to you after I inspect it. And if you want it autographed, I'll autograph it for free. You know, because many people do that. I've got one person that continuously wants my autograph on the shirts, so I will put those on the shirt as well. So there you go. So what else is going on out there? I know we just lost a couple of peoples, and that's cool. Casey, what's been going on with you? Talk to me, Goose. Talk to me. I mean, I know we've talked about all kinds of stuff off screen, off camera, which is awesome, which is cool. How's that snow treating you up there? Trying to stay warm. Got a fire going. I did have a fire going until last night. I mean, it's 38 degrees here, so it's nothing like your neck of the woods. I wish we had the snow going on here uh, to go with the cooler weather, but we don't. You know, for that to happen, I'm going to have to move to somewhere up north or even Alaska. You know, Siberia is a little bit out of the question, but hoodie on, it feels like negative 24 degrees. Well, damn, dude, I'm sorry about that. That does get into your bones and sets in. Um, my office doesn't have heat, so I've got a little heater in here because there's no central heat and air or the central heat piped into here. So I've got a window unit over here and I've got a heater going on over here. So feel like temp outside. Yeah, no, I get that. You know, like I said, we're 38 degrees here supposedly, but whenever you get a little bit of wind, it that wind chill makes it a whole lot different when it comes down to it. So, um, but yeah, no, that's some cold weather for you, brother. And I know you don't like that word. I apologize. Yeah, it does burn, especially if you breathe it in. I remember when I was in Indianapolis, and it was like dead of winter, and it was negative 10 degrees while we were walking to work when I worked at Walmart, and we were going to the convention center from the hotel, and it was negative 10 degrees, and every time you breathed in, and yeah, exactly, it'll freeze. It'll freeze to your wing, and you know you're breathing in that cold air, and it's just like as you're coughing and gagging because it's so bitter cold, that negative 10 degrees, and it just freezes up everything. You know, you're trying to stay as warm as possible, and you knew it was going to be cold, but you didn't know it was going to be negative 10 degrees cold. You know, those type things. And then of course, if I were to move to Alaska, then you've got to look at negative 40 and 50 degrees, you know, or more. And it's just like, well, I guess I'd have a roaring fire going on a regular basis, you know. And then to get past the permafrost and all that good stuff, you know, to build in, and it'd be quite interesting. But I think I could do it, you know, even in my shape that I am today after 2 heart attacks and all that good stuff, you know, just to go live free in reality. I mean, yeah, buy a piece of property and then get paid from the state after you've lived there for a year, and from the mineral rights that everybody gets dispersed amongst everybody. Yeah, the cost of living is higher there. But if I'm out in the middle of the wilderness, what's the cost of living? Running water that I get from a stream, fresh uh, vegetables and fresh game, you know, um, that's not processed in a store. And yeah, I know you have to kill in season, schmill in season. I can't use certain words. Uh, Entertainment purposes only. TikTok. Um, And to take a game animal, it has to be in season. I get that. And so, uh, but there it seems like season is all year round for certain things. And then to be able to have fur lined gloves from the pelts of animals, things like that you use everything of. Uh, it would just be amazing, you know. And it's just thoughts, always thoughts, that type of thing. What if, what if, what if I did sell this place and just move off into the middle of nowhere? Exactly. Wouldn't have anybody around you for 50 miles, 100 miles. Now you might have that occasional backpacker that's going through the woods for whatever reason, but you know, uh, but yeah, no, it's Alaska is a completely different wilderness, and that's fine with me. I could do it. I'd give it a try. I need to go visit my half sister that's up there in Anchorage just to get the taste of it. Just to feel it because I've had several relatives that have lived there. My uncle and my grandpa's brother lived there with his wife, and then my half sister lives up there with her husband right now. Just got the Christmas card from them. This is her address. I never keep it for whatever reason, but that's her address right there. Yep, they live in Anchorage, Alaska. And so your ancestor, some weird guy, said if his neighbor's smoke could be seen, that's too close. And we all know Daniel Boone. That's a pretty cool ancestor to have, brother, to be honest with you on that. And I just did it again. I apologize. That's a cool ancestor to have. Not many people can say, hey, my ancestor is Daniel Boone. But yes, he is absolutely correct. If you can see your neighbor, they're too close. If you can see the smoke from your neighbor, be it from a touche, ha. Um, if you can see the smoke from your neighbor's house, they're too close. If you can see the smoke from your neighbor's fire, they're too close. If you can see the smoke from your neighbor's powdery behind, they're too close. Um, but yeah, no, and like right now, I wish I didn't have the neighbors I had over here. These neighbors are cool, but I would just rather not have neighbors. But so but then you get to thinking about some amenities in life. If you don't have a structure built before wintertime, you're SOL. If you don't have, you know, your cell phone going, you're SOL. What kind of service are you going to have out in the middle of the boonies? Probably none whatsoever. Now I know the Alaskan shows show them still having cell phones and all that stuff. I'm in town, but it's played back slow motion here. No, that's cool though. You know, I mean, just the pictures that you post. I don't know if that's coming off your patio or whatever, but it's very serene and very peaceful and very, you know, not a city, just a town. Yeah, it's one of those picturesque postcard towns that you see. And again, with all the snow that's happening right now, your little snowman that you built, which is cute and functional because it's still a snowman. It's very cool stuff. I mean, that's the type of stuff that not everybody gets to do or see. I mean, you get to walk out and walk into a trail, you know, and get to see the wildlife, on the river as the border. Absolutely. See, I mean, you could have a fishing pole out there, you know. on a regular basis, catching you some catfish or whatever's in that river, you know, and that would be and that's one of the things I want eventually is to have a a pond or a lake right out my back door that I can just throw a rod out there and just let it sit, and come back and check it. Oh look, I got a fish. Hey look, there's dinner. There's lunch. Whatever. Oh, my eyes are itching. What does that mean? What does that mean? Your eyes itch. Trot line. Well, trot lines. I wouldn't go that far. I might throw out a couple of jugs or something like that, on a pond and see what happens. But trot lines are just dangerous, man. They're dangerous. Run across a bunch of those when we're out fishing. My grandpa and I used to cut them on a regular basis out at Hugo. Because technically you weren't supposed to be running trout lines on the lake and things of that nature, but people still did it anyway. And when we were out bass fishing, we would hook into their line, their trout line, and pull it up, and we would check it to see if there was any fish on it. And if there was, we would, hey, we got some fish, and then we would cut the line. You know, can't go to the other side without port entry in Canada. Exactly. Now I get that because like Maine and Canada, they're a stone's throw apart, and yeah, I totally understand that. So here's my question: you throw out to the middle of the river and it's on the Canada side. Can you bring that fish back without a passport? Say you catch that fish on the Canada side. Does he need a passport to cross the river? Oh, I know it's a crazy question, but it's some things that live rent free in my head sometimes. You know, yes, just don't stand on the wrong side of the riverbank is all. Well, I hope you don't, because I mean, where you're standing should still be on the United States side of the river. So, but no, I get it. It's a whole different world, you know, because those little towns. Is there a big city in Maine? I've only been to Maine one time, and that was at the airport, and it was dark, so we didn't get to go venture out or anything like that. We were a refuel spot, and then we were off to the other side of the world. Um, a money game, absolutely. Portland, okay, Bangor. Bangor is where we were. That's where we stopped. It was Bangor, Maine, at the airport. And so again, we didn't get off the. I mean, we got off the plane just to stretch our legs, but we were right back on uh, in a heartbeat, and then whisked away to our next destination. I'm trying to think if that's where we got on because we flew in a domestic plane before we got on the C-130, and I'm trying to think of where we got on the C-130 at because Maine was the last United States stop, so that might have been where we got strapped to the wall for our 16-hour journey over to Afghan or over to Kabul, not Kabul, over to Kuwait. Sorry. So, but yeah, that was a fun plane ride. Let me tell you, I slept most of it, uh, but most people were white knuckling, holding on, and I was over there like, it is not many folks up here. One of the least popular with folks. I get that, and you mean, and I understand populace. But I get that. I mean, Jessica made it famous with the murder she wrote, even though it was a fictitious town um, up there. So, and but yeah, no, I get the appeal to being there with, like you said, the least populous, a lot less people there. Um, I mean, I'm in a town of 470 people, and I'm okay with that. but I've got big cities, next to me, one way or the other. Greenwood on one side, Fort Smith on the other. 100,000 people over here, and 40,000 people over there, and yeah, the absolute wildlife. You have moose. Do you have moose there? Moose. Do you have moose? Moose and squirrel. Once we pull a rabbit out of my hat. Oh, wrong hat. So, um, I know in certain states there are, but Alaska for sure, and then some other northern states up that way have moose. You have moose. You probably have elk. I sent you a picture. Oh, that's right. Yeah. I remember now. So yeah, I apologize. I forgot it. Yes, you did send me a Mises to pieces. So yeah, you do have moose. Did you go out and look at the super moon last night? That was supposedly there about 6:10, 6:20, something like that. Supposedly the biggest moon in quite a while. Bear, elk, and deer. See, that's cool. We have bear. We have elk around here, but they're in a popular in a thing in a fence basically. Uh, I did. It was bright. See, that's awesome. It won't happen again for another 18.6 years, I believe is what they said. Um, so some of us might not be around, me included. I could not be around by that point in time. Next time it comes back around. Yes, it was a super moon. Um, so it was very cool. It was cloudy here, so we didn't get to see it. We did go outside to look, but it was too cloudy for that here. And but bear, elk, and deer. So that'd be cool. I mean, to just step outside and I need a moose today. Pow! There you go, got him. And, yeah, I mean those are some cool things, and that's the appeal of Alaska, because you have so many different things: wolves, coyotes, foxes, um, deer, elk, mink, martens, ptarmigans, lots of danger. Because I mean you're in the middle of nowhere. I mean if you get hurt, yeah, the shoe bill. I still want one of those for my backyard. Um, but you're out in the middle in Alaska. You're in the middle of nowhere, especially if you live in the middle of nowhere. You don't have ambulatory services readily available. You don't have police readily available. Especially if you're 75, 80 miles out of town or something like that. Egrets and cranes and herons. Oh my, are plenty here. See, that's awesome, but you're right on the river too, so that makes it even more, many kinds of those. And we get the same, here. I can't say so much as egrets, but cranes and herons, 100%. Tons of woodpeckers. I mean, we get orioles from time to time. Now, like right about now is when some orioles should be showing up. So if you throw around some oranges and orange peels outside and some apples, they'll stick around for a while. But yeah, we have tons of different sizes of woodpeckers, different kinds of woodpeckers, from the smallest to the biggest, you know, and all things in between. But tons of cardinals and grackles and blackbirds and all kinds of things. Our main birds are south now, but some stay. I mean, yeah, I get that. You do get some geese that don't migrate for whatever reason. Ducks don't either, but you get tons that do. So I get it. I mean, we're in the same boat because everything should be migrating right now, but we've got a ton of stuff that is like, why are you still here? You know. So I get that, but see that's just cool stuff to be able to walk out your backyard and look at the river that's flowing by and see all the ducks and geese and the herons and the egrets and the cranes and the deer and the elk and the antelope play. You know, that's just awesome. That's how life is meant to be. You know, and yeah, no, I get that. It's because my back deck that I'm building right now is covered in it too. So I have to go out there with my water hose and spray it off. So I'm in the process of getting it laid down and then getting it sealed so that it's a lot nicer and doesn't deteriorate over time. So I'm using reclaimed wood anyway, so it's already got its issues, if you will. So, uh, so yeah, I've got to get it sealed and I've got to get some places fixed with some epoxy type stuff to fill in some gaps and holes and stuff like that. So I totally understand that with the shit everywhere because that's what ducks and geese and chickens are known for. It's great fertilizer too, but just like the nitrogen in the water from the ducks and the geese goes back into the plants. You know, so. But yeah, no, I totally get it, man. But that's the life. If you're able to live that lifestyle, please do it. You know, I'm technically retired, even though I do illustration and homesteading. You know, but to be able to walk out and sit on your back deck or your front deck even, and have a river going by and looking at just that wildlife going by, that's a dream come true for most people. You know, and you're fine. You do what you got to do for yourself, man. But yeah, no, that's the life that a lot of people only dream about doing. That what you're doing, Casey. And you know, so keep living that dream. I know it's not all roses. Absolutely, I get it. Um, and but keep living that dream. Keep pushing forward. Keep living off the land. You know, you've got some of the best meat in your freezer, and I'm wanting to get to that point. Where I don't have processed meats from the store, from the grocery store, from the Wally World, and all that good stuff. You know, I want to be able to be like, hey, I need some elk. I need some buffalo. I need some, deer meat. I need, all that different type of meats. I can just go to my freezer and be like, hey, which one do I need today? Okay, this one. Got it. And, that's just awesome. 100% awesome. And I know where I could get some help if I did go to Alaska because they live in Alaska. The Rainies, you know, and that would be super cool. What is here Speaking of comic strips, Casey, um, if it has XYZ ingredients, it's not for me. Exactly. I mean, we need to know what's going into our food, but most people don't even care anymore. Oh, it tastes good. I love it. I'm going to eat it. And it's just like there's so many chemicals in our foods that people just don't understand. That's why getting fresh processed foods are better for you. But people again don't understand that because the price. Look at the price. I can go over here and get this steak for $10, but I go over to the fresh marketplace and it's $15. Well, I'm not going to pay that extra $5. You know, and some of the best meat we get is from a local processor here in town. Um, no, I love clowns. I actually have some haunted clowns in my library. So no, I'm not afraid of clowns. Never have been. This is one of my artworks, by the way. Japan punk, right there. And I love some clowns, you know. And like I said, I've got a couple of haunted clowns in my collection, and so yeah, no, clowns are awesome. I've always loved clowns. Are you afraid of clowns? Especially the ones that go around at night and walk and chase you around in the dark with their chainsaws or their. You're not afraid of them. Okay, cool. As it was once said, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. No, I'm a military guy, so there's a lot that doesn't scare me. Lived through an IED blast. Fear itself and clowns. All of those goody good things. But no, no, no. I'm a horror buff. I love my horror movies. I live in a haunted house. I have paranormal stuff that happens on a regular basis, so I don't get freaked out like most people. If you go back and watch one of my videos, a couple of my videos, two different angles, you'll see where I had my Dexter painting up here on the wall on this magnet that's here, and I've got my fan usually going, and it was going that day, and my Dexter painting that was there. This is Patrick Bateman from American Psycho. Um, and this is one of my paintings that you're looking at right there. And the Dexter one was there, and it flew off. So you can go back and watch that on my video, and I don't react other than, oh, well, the spirits didn't like that, you know, being up there. Well, I appreciate that. That's just one of my minis that I've got. I've got tons of paintings sitting around here, all over the place, including artwork like this right here. But no, I do all kinds of stuff. So don't forget to like, share, and follow while you're here. Yes, I do. Absolutely. You can hit me up in DMs and we'll talk. Because TikTok doesn't like for me to talk about that type of stuff here. So, you know, because they want their cut, you know. I'll tell you what I love about here is the natural life, not the rat race. People are quiet and cozy. See, that's awesome. You know, it's kind of like here where I'm at as well. Um, and we don't get a whole lot of the hustle and bustle right around me here. Now, if you go to the city, of course, Fort Smith, you do. Go to Greenwood, you do. But right here, it's country living. I've got a cow field right across the street. I've got an empty field right directly behind me that is owned by OG&E, so I don't look to see anybody back there for a while. I've cleared out my property to my property line where it's supposed to be, you know, um, and and just go from there, you know. And you know, I've got a garden out there. I've got my chickens and my geese and my ducks. You know, I've got the pigs. You know, the pigs have no contributing factor because they're not going to get turned into bacon or you know, rack of ribs or anything like that because they're like the family pets, like the dogs. You're in H? No, I'm in Fort Smith, Arkansas area. I live in a small town of 470 people, if I had to guess. Uh, and pure food and opportunities are endless on pure food. Absolutely. And see, Casey here lives in Maine, and so he gets to see he gets all the good stuff. You know, he gets his elk and his deer and all that good stuff, and gets to eat off the fat of the lamb, if you will. Not lamb, but land. So yeah, Japan Punk. Yeah, we live in all kinds of different areas of the world. So, but uh, but no, free only cost of exactly, absolutely. And if it's how can I even put that? Um, one schmott, one schmill. Uh, I'm sorry, you have to key phrase things. You can't use exact words here uh, because TikTok does not like it. Did I say Portsmouth? I don't remember saying Portsmouth. Store would be thousands, but here free base. Exactly, absolutely. As long as it's in season, you don't want to take it illegally. No, um, Fort Smith and is what I said. I didn't say Portsmouth, but no, I get why you said New Hampshire. So yes, tag them absolutely. And see, no, it's fine. It's fine. Uh, Sometimes my vocabulary does not come out clearly, so I have to pronunciate things even better. But Fort Smith, Arkansas area, or road smack, exactly. I've done that. That's how I first got into hunting. Um, was I smacked a deer with my car, and it did more damage to my car than what I was going to get, from the meat. So the highway patrolman was like, "Well, you can either take it with you and process it yourself, or find somebody to process it for you, or I can just call the game warden and he'll come and process it and give it to people that need it." I said, "Well," he goes, "but it's already messed up your car enough that you know you might as well get something out of it." I was like, "Yeah, let's go ahead and do that." I mean, we even use some of the bruise stuff, the ribs. So, but that's how I started hunting. Go to the pantry and church and share. Exactly, absolutely, and that's how it should be. You know, if you have plenty or over plenty, then why not share some of it? You know, and a lot of people just don't do that. So, exactly, 100%. I get that absolutely. Japan Punk, send me a message and we'll talk, or I'll send you a message after the show. I've got another person I've got to reach out to as well. My friends do the share on their. See, that's awesome, and and that's how it should be. It shouldn't be. Well, I'm just hoarding everything, and oh look, it's freezer burn now because I didn't get to it in time, and there we got people around here that do that periodically. They'll store their game birds and things like that, their Cornish hens and stuff like that, and then they'll just be like, "Hey, we're giving away X amount. How many bags do you want?" And I'll be like, "Hey, I'll take 2 bags," and it's usually got 3 or 4 birds per bag, and so that's if there's 8 birds in there, you know that's 4 meals right there. And sometimes even more than that if you cut the bird in half after it's thawed out, and just eat half a bird. You know, but absolutely, I mean, things should be shared out there, but so many people don't, and that's another appeal to Alaska because it's the barter system, and it's if your neighbor needs help, you go help your neighbor. No matter how long they've been there, and most people don't expect anything in return because they're there to help. Now, of course, you're going to help them out if they need help because they helped you out. So, but that's one place where the barter system is still alive, and it should be alive everywhere. You know, but so many people are like, "No, I want $75, or I want $3,000 for this or that or the other," and it's just like, "Okay, dude, I'll figure it out." And but that's some of the great things about certain towns and certain states where things are still alive, especially in the bush of Alaska. I can't say it's that way everywhere, but there's still some barter systems out there. If you can find them. A handshake is still as good as a handwritten document, and that's a bygone world right there. And it shows how much the world has changed for this. I've got to have this, you and you see it in your electric bill, you see it in your water bill, you see it in your, everything that gets taxed, you see it, and it's just ridiculousness, and but until all that's abolished and gone away with, we have to keep paying it, you know, or so they say. Now you can buck the system, And there's ways around certain things as well, living trusts and things of that nature. Look into those if you want to get away with some things legally, uh, like not paying taxes and everything reverts to you when you pass on and things of that nature. And so, um, lots of different things you can do. Just look into certain things. But all right, folks, I'm going to kill it for today. I've got some aminals that I'm hearing stirring around, but I appreciate it. We used to take care of those who didn't have through our churches and charities. See, that's awesome. That's freaking amazing. And but so many people just don't, and that's the problem. And that's society in a nutshell, is that they don't care. You do have those that truly do care, like right here and Casey and several others. But then you've got those that are just like, no, I could care less. You know, um, I've got what I've got, and you don't got what you got, so I'm not going to help you out by any stretch of the imagination or anything like that. You know, and even though I'm an illustrator and paint and draw and all that good stuff, do everything by hand, I don't see, you know, big spikes of commissions or things of that nature like a lot of other artists do. Um, and it's just like, I'm okay with that, you know? And this was my rebuild year for my brand 412 Productions so that I could be getting new stuff in for the 2026 season to go back to comic book conventions and things like that. It hasn't worked out that way yet. I'm hoping some things that I'm doing right now get me to that point. Um, I don't show in galleries. I haven't yet. I've got a few people that have wanted me to so far, here, especially here locally. So I'm looking into those as well, just to see what we can do, because there's a few places around town that do art gallery type setups, and now some of them do charge the artist uh, to set up in. So I'm looking at different opportunities and things like that. But I've got my website, and then I've got, like I said, I go to comic book conventions. This was my rebuild year, so I haven't been to a comic book convention this year, and I don't know if I'm going to be hitting anything in the early 2026 sector yet or not. Yeah, don't do where they charge. Absolutely not. Um, and those are the ones that I've avoided so far. Now, again, there's some other ones that are like, yeah, we'll display, and I'm looking at them too. It's been a little bit since I've talked to them, so I've got to get back in touch with them, with a few of them. But yeah, no, absolutely. So many places will gouge you for anything, and and again, there should be a barter system out there, alive and well today here in certain areas. You know, and we can bring those back. We the people. All that good stuff, and we just have to do it. Is what it boils down to. But I'm going to kill it for today, folks. I do appreciate you guys. I will be in touch with a few people that have hit me up so far for different pieces of artwork, because I've got, you know, stuff on paper. I can order the shirts in and get them to you, uh, on hoodies and whatever you want them on. You need someone who believes in it. Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. And on that same token, you got to believe in yourself. But again, I'm out of here, you guys. I appreciate each and everybody, and I will be in touch here in just a few moments after I get some animals taken care of. But as I like to say, as I leave you guys, we will catch you on the flip side. Have a good day, everybody.